Watchword, Pride and Prejudice, Secret Files Revealed. Written and narrated by C. Taylor. Edited to meet YouTube guidelines. To read the unedited version, please click the link in the description. Chapter 1. Elizabeth Bennet walked past the field and toward the fence. Her long walks were her one indulgence, and she cherished the solitude. Her sleepy village had seemingly no end of paths and fields to explore, but she had long become excessively familiar with all the land in and around her home. As she passed through the gate, she heard the thundering of hoofs in the distance. A quick glance showed two gentlemen racing towards Netherfield Park, the grandest house in Hertfordshire. It had been empty for far too long. Perhaps it would be let out soon. She smiled. Although it would have very little effect on her family, having the house inhabited again would be of great benefit to the tradesmen. Such a boost of potential prosperity to her beloved village would be such a happy event. She noted the way they rode. Straight in the saddle, possibly handsome, and if they could afford such a fine house in possession of a fortune of some size. Her smile widened. If all was true, oh, the fuss they will receive from the townsmen and townswomen. That could prove to be quite the entertainment for her. Things had been quiet for some time. Her last mission was nearly 3 months ago, and although there were still two men missing from the five they needed to find, she felt such a sense of boredom and restlessness. They still could not identify the last two. The other three had proven of no help, all opting to end their lives to keep the information safe. One before Lizzie had a chance to do it for them. It could be some time before she was called into service again. For now, she would have to content herself in her role as one of the eldest daughters in the Bennet family and continue to stroll the hills and valleys to quietly appease her restless nature. She rounded the last post and started on the path to her home. Much too far away, she heard her younger sisters loudly arguing. Only a few more steps, and she could hear it was about some bonnet that Kitty had bought, which was then unceremoniously taken by Lydia and thoroughly altered. Something she did with Kitty's things with regularity. She remembered an 8-year-old Lydia trying to take one of Elizabeth's things. One quick flip to the floor, much harder than Lydia had ever expected, taught her very early on not to tamper with her or her possessions. She had not dared to so much as step inside Elizabeth's room since. Nearing the house, her mother's shrill voice had joined. Any neighbor passing by would find plenty of gossip to share. Their names had been discussed on more than one occasion in the village due to the behaviors of her younger sisters, both in and out of the house. Not willing to enter the house just yet, she neared a window and peered in. Her father, Mr. Bennet, looked up, alerted by the movement out the window, and was treated with his smiling daughter. The sudden outbursts were especially taxing for his very sensitive ears, so he didn't smile back. His eyes pleaded with her to stop the commotion. She winked at him and smiled wider as the shrill older voice screeched, "Jane! Lizzie! Where are you? You need to stop this now!" This was closely followed by Lydia chiding, "Ha ha! They are not even here. You can do nothing." Mr. Bennet smiled finally and looked back at her with a wink. Her sister Jane silently moved beside her, leaving the solitude of the shed where she loved to dry flowers and lead on with Lizzie, as she was called by her family. Through the open window she responded with Jane in unison. "Here, mamma," was all they said, and the house immediately fell silent. By the next Sunday the entire village was in a tizzy. Netherfield had indeed been let, and the new resident was apparently even more interesting than she could have dreamed. The man was, as hoped, in possession of a fortune. 5,000 a year, if rumors were to be true, would bring prosperity to the entire village, but even more incredulous, he was not married. Lizzie would have felt sorry for the gentleman and what he was about to encounter moving to her small village, if she were not so excited to view the spectacle herself. Still no leads on the final two, so there was no telling how long she would be confined here, and the entertainment could prove to be quite diverting. She could already hear whispers through the chapel as excited young women of marriageable age could not wait until after the service to put words to their dreams. From what her excellent ears could catch, they would be completely moved in within a fortnight, as it was anticipated they would join the assembly in Town Hall a month from now. Relieved that neither she nor Jane would have to worry about catching either his eye or hand in marriage, she would most happily consent herself to merely observe. After the service, it would seem Mrs. Bennet finally realized the village had not been gossiping about her or her daughters for far too long, and excitedly rushed to her husband. "Mr. Bennet! Oh, Mr. Bennet, wait until you hear!" she shrieked in a tone and pitch that was uniquely hers. The volume pulled the attention of other villagers waiting for the next opportunity to gossip. "Netherfield has let it last!" she squealed. "Is it?" Mr. Bennet asked calmly, and then said nothing else, clearly to irritate his wife, one of his favorite diversions. When he did not give her any additional response, she continued. "Yes, it is indeed!" she exclaimed. Mr. Bennet nodded curtly and continued to walk toward home. "And do you want to know by whom?" she asked. He shrugged. "You seem to want to tell me, and I cannot think of a single objection," he continued to tease her. She did not care, and nearly interrupted before he was finished. "Apparently it's a Mr. Bingley, a man of large fortune, single man of large fortune," she continued. She waited again for him to respond. He purposely did not. Undaunted, she pressed forward. "What a good thing for our girls!" This got the attention of the overly protective Mr. Bennet. He stopped and looked back at Jane and Lizzie. "How so, and how can it affect them?" "Mr. Bennet, how can you be so tiresome? You must know I am thinking of him marrying one of them." Mrs. Bennet had gladly taken in the two very handsome young girls. Her hope was that their beauty would raise their status and reputation. The increase in income to take care of them merely fed her ambition to use them in whatever way she could. She had already heard whispers that surely the two eldest Bennet girls would be most likely to find favor with the new neighbor. To hopefully deflect her attention, he added, "So that is his design in moving to Hertfordshire, is to marry one of them?" He winked at Lizzie and continued walking. "Oh, Mr. Bennet, you are indeed intent to be tiresome. Of course it's not. But you know, with their beauty, he will likely fall in love with one of them." Now it was Lizzie's turn to interrupt, for it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a large fortune must be in want of a wife. She chided. Jane giggled, whispered to Lizzie alone. "That truth is so fixed on the minds of the surrounding families that he will surely be considered the rightful property of all the daughters." Both sisters quietly laughed. The poor soul must know what he would face from such a village. Mrs. Bennet did not seem to hear her sarcasm and turned, thinking Lizzie was supporting her argument. "Yes, he must indeed, so you must call on him once he is in town." "Oh, no, I see no reason for that. You can go without me," Mr. Bennet added. He was on a roll. "What can you even suggest?" she interrupted. "Or they can go on their own," he interrupted back. "Mr. Bennet!" "I'm only thinking of our reputation. You're as handsome as they are. He might like you best of the party." Lydia snorted a very loud laugh at the statement. One look by Lizzie, in warning, quieted her instantly, though Lizzie had to hide her own smile as she turned away. The fuss that ensued once they reached the house put both Jane and Lizzie's nerves on edge. Mrs. Bennet bellowed for Hill, the housekeeper, and complained how Mr. Bennet was set on ruining the entire family by not calling on the new neighbor, Mr. Bingley, once he was in town. Hill tried to soothe her, but she was beyond consoling. Even Jane tried to calm her by reminding her father was just teasing. Surely he would call upon him just as he would call on any new neighbor in town. "No, he will not. You know your father has a will of iron," she bit out, nearly turning red with anger that she was being thwarted in her attempts to exploit her charges. Lizzie, for once, was relieved by his stance. She just wanted to stand back and watch, not be a part of it, but Mrs. Bennet was determined to throw them right in the middle of it. She was suddenly no longer looking forward to the town assembly in 1 month. As the day approached, sadly, her father had only been teasing and had called upon Mr. Bingley. According to his review, he was very amiable, quite lively with his conversation, and had a trusted friend that didn't speak at all, but possessed a controlled level of disdain for country living. Her hope of enjoying Mr. Bingley's move to town was beginning to turn into more of an agitation, especially when she heard additional mentions of his quiet and discourteous friend. It would seem to be the only thing anyone wished to speak of. With nothing of interest to distract her, her restlessness returned. Is there any word on either of the last two? Lizzie inquired of Mr. Bennet, hoping it was good news that would prevent her from going to the assembly in just 2 days. There have been several matching accounts that a wealthy merchant conspired to transfer Jane to France, where you both met. Then the intent was to transfer you both to Constantinople before continuing on to, well, we still don't know where the final destination was to be. The memories of that time still made her feel slightly sick inside. It had been nearly 10 years since the darkest time of her life, but time had not stopped the nightmares it caused that she still had nearly every night. Her hope was that they would soon capture the last of the men that conspired to take Jane and use her royal blood deemed valuable regardless of its legitimacy, leaving her safe at last. Once all 5 conspirators were decommissioned, Jane would be safe, and Lizzie could determine what to do with the rest of her life. Until then, she was here to protect Jane and work with the Allegiance to make sure every person responsible for taking Jane pay for what they had done. Is this merchant one of the 5? She asked casually. By all accounts, no, but he knew the names of all involved. Once we have him, we should be able to acquire the identities of the final 2, Mr. Bennet admitted. A surge of hope. This might be over sooner than she thought possible. Lacking any patience, she pushed for more information she could hopefully use for a solo mission to speed things along. Who is this wealth of knowledge? She asked with a smile, so to speak. Mr. Bennet smiled back at her. She enjoyed the clever banter with him and the more serious conversations about the missions. If she ever had been fortunate enough to have a real father, she would have hoped he would have been just like this man who protected her, trained her, and taught her everything she knew about espionage. Even their mother didn't know this part of Mr. Bennet's life. To everyone, except a very few, he was a country gentleman with a modest income and fated with no sons, only daughters. This otherwise unassuming man was one of the nation's most illustrious spies that kept England safe from multiple threats both on and off English soil. He was also as lethal as they came. Some of these skills he had taught to her. Once we have everything in place, we will send you in. Until then, just enjoy yourself. He knew from experience she would take off and bring the guilty party in on her own, no matter the danger or personal risk. As such, he needed to be very careful in the information he shared with her, since, though he was loath to admit it, he had grown very fond of his young and clever charge. She had proven quite proficient in every skill he instructed, would have surpassed his own abilities were it not for the limits of what he could show her due to her gender, a limit that he valued, as the girl also had no fear for her own safety. Because of that, he was careful with the information he shared, knowing he would never recover if anything happened to her. Only when he had a sure plan with protections all around her would he send her in. Until then, he wouldn't give her the slightest information on what he knew. A head drop and upward glancing glare just made him care for her more. The world would be such a darker place if anything happened to either her or Jane. The assembly should keep you more than entertained for the next few days. She scoffed. I think you know I would do just about anything to not be at the center of that storm, and since you purposely spoke to Mr. Bingley about Jane and I, one could hardly avoid it. He was the one that asked. Apparently many had warned them that you both were not as handsome as they might have heard. Since they hadn't actually heard anything about either of you, he naturally had many questions. She rolled her eyes again. You did say he seemed to be clever, and how did you put it? Not at all tedious to talk to? His warm smile brightened his face, and he nodded. Then, with any luck, it won't be as miserable as I fear. We will be enjoying your company at the event, I trust. I will be returning to London to finalize some plans, so alas, you will have to fill me in on the details when I return. This pulled a look of disdain from her, and all she could do was shake her head at him as she left the room. His quiet chuckling behind her finally made her smile. He was so dear to her. When this was all over, she would miss him. A final plan pulled her far away from this town and this country. After all the threats against Jane were stopped, she knew she would be her final threat. If her true parentage were ever discovered, no one she loved would escape the disgrace it would bring. She wandered into Jane's room. Her dear friend was every bit as loved as if she were her actual sister. "Hello, love," Jane soothed as she continued braiding her hair in preparation for bed. "Hello, Belle," Lizzie greeted back, the nickname she started calling her when they met in France. Lizzie grabbed the shawl at the end of her bed, pulled it over her shoulders, and sat in a nearby chair. After a moment of thought, she spoke what was on her mind. "If I could love a man who would love me back for a mere £50 a year, I would be well pleased." "Yes," Jane responded, used to Lizzie's random conversations. "But such a man could hardly be sensible, and we both know I could never love a man who is out of his wits." Jane laughed softly. "But then again, any man who had his wits would have enough money that I would cause him shame, so I shall end an old maid and teach your 11 children to paint and play instruments." They both laughed. She did not share that this was more of a wish than something that could ever be possible. A pairing where either partner could not respect the other could not be agreeable for either party, she agreed. "As we have daily proof," Lizzie observed, referring to their parents. "I believe mother sees you especially as the one that will raise their fortune. You are by far the most fair, and have the sweetest disposition of any maiden in all of England. My biggest fear is that after Mr. Bingley meets you, if he does not make you swoon, word will spread, and all wealthy bachelors will swarm." "I can only do so much. If I break too many wealthy men's necks, we will have more threats, not less." "I am not the only fair maiden that will attract attention far and wide. You are more than capable of doing the same all on your own," Jane warned. Lizzie pulled the throw tighter over her shoulder at the sudden chill she felt. "I have a French actress as a mother and a mystery as a father, so I, unlike you, would bring shame to anyone, whether high or low. You know I cannot marry anyone I do not love, but if I love them, I would never harm them, so all paths end with me as an old maid." "How can you discount everything you are and can do? You are marvelous, and your perceived connections are respectable." Jane insisted on countering Lizzie's every objection. "And if it had ever made known my true connections, I would destroy anyone who declared any slight to your excellent nature." Jane's countenance became cold as she gazed at Lizzie. Lizzie smiled, understanding the fierceness of that connection, but she still did not understand Jane's naive view on life. If only there was some way to ensure her true past would never be known, but Jane was born with royal blood, not a gutter snipe. She was at the top looking down. Lizzie knew life from the bottom up. From her side, things just did not work out like Jane's life always seemed to. "We need to be cautious tomorrow. Try to look like you made an effort, but if possible, look even less attractive than you normally do. We need to make every effort to minimize the potential damage an interaction with a wealthy bachelor could cause," Lizzie counseled. Jane's countenance brightened. "I shall do my best."